ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is entitled King Pururava, enchanted by Urvashi. Text number 46. Tasya nirmanthanat jato tasya nirmanthanat jato jataveda vibhavasuhu jataveda vibhavasuhu trayya sa vidyaya rajnya trayya sa vidyaya rajnya उत्तरत्वे कल्पितस्त्रिव्रे उत्तरत्वे कल्पितस्त्रिव्रे तस्य निर्मन्थनात् जातो जातवेदा विभावसुः त्रय्या सविद्यया राज्ञा पुत्रत्वे कल्पितस्त्रिव्रत. तस्य निर्मन्थनात् जातो जातवेदा विभावसुः त्रय्या सविद्यया राज्ञा पुत्रत्वे कल्पितस्त्रिव्रत. तस्य निर्मन्थनात् जातो जातवेदा विभावसुः त्रय्या सविद्यया राज्ञा पुत्रत्वे कल्पितस्त्रिव्रत. तस्य निर्मन्थनात् जातो जातवेदा विभावसुः त्रय्या सविद्यया राज्ञा पुत्रत्वे कल्पितस्त्रिव्रत. Tasya of Pururava Nirmanthanat, because of interaction, Jataha was born, Jatavedaha meant for material enjoyment according to the Vedic principles. Vibhavasuho, a fire. Trayya, following the Vedic principles. Saha, the fire. Vidyaya, by such a process. Rajya, by the king. Putratve, a son's being born. Kalpitaha, it so became. Trivrat, the three letters A, U, Ma, combined together as Om. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. From Pururava's rubbing of the aranis came a fire. By such a fire, one can achieve all success in material enjoyment and be purified in seminal birth, initiation, and in the performance of sacrifice, which are invoked with the combined letters A, U, Ma. Thus, the fire was considered the son of King Pururava. Please repeat this translation after me. From Pururava's rubbing of the aranis came a fire. By such a fire, one can achieve all success in material enjoyment and be purified in seminal birth, initiation, and in the performance of sacrifice, which are invoked with the combined letters A, U, Ma. Thus, the fire was considered the son of King Pururava. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to the Vedic process, one can get a son through semen, Shukra. One can get a bona fide disciple through initiation, Savitra. Or one can get a son or disciple through the fire of sacrifice, Yajna. Thus, when Maharaj Pururava generated the fire by rubbing the aranis, the fire became his son. Either by semen, by initiation, or by yajna, one may get a son. The Vedic mantra Omkara or Pranava, consisting of the letters A, U, Ma, can call each of these three methods into existence. Therefore, the words Nirmanthanad Jataha indicate that by the rubbing of the aranis, a son was born. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinam. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nitya Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurava Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama. This chapter describes King Pururava enchanted by Urvashi. Urvashi is an Apsara from the heavenly planets. And Pururava was ruling the earth planet. So this Urvashi was cursed to come down to the earth and stay on the earth for 1 year. So she learned the ways of the human beings and she came down and she was attracted to Pururava, the emperor of this earth planet. So when she approached Pururava, immediately Pururava accepted her and spent 1 year time with her, enjoying her company. But after 1 year, when she had to go back, his heart was broken. He had become so attached to her but he became almost mad in separation from her. And he was thinking of ways and means for him to go to the heavenly planet to again meet her. And while thinking of her, he desired to have progeny, sons through her. So as he was meditating upon Urvashi, the Treta millennium began, the Treta Yuga began. And in the Treta Yuga, the process of performing yajna for fulfillment of material desires was given. So Pururava took advantage of this process of performing yajna in order to desire to have a son. So he followed the process of the Vedic sacrifice, fire sacrifice, that is described here as Traya. In the Vedas, there are different divisions of the Vedas. Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and Upasana Kanda. Karma Kanda section of the Vedas describes the methods of performing certain pious activities while chanting the corresponding mantras in order to fulfill specific material desires. Since the number of material desires of people in this human society is so very vast, the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas is also the biggest portion of the entire Vedic literature. So there is a recommendation for practically every type of desire a human being can have to be fulfilled through performance of this Vedic ritual. Broadly, the Vedic rituals are classified into three types: Yajna, Dana, Tapa. Yajna is the method of performing fire sacrifice. Dana is the method of giving in charity to those who are qualified to receive charity. And Tapa refers to performing austerities, vrata. So all the three are described in what is called as the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. And this forms the bulk of the original Vedas. So if somebody studies the original Vedas without any reference to the Upanishads or the Itihasas or the Puranas, then they will be completely lost in this vast ocean of Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. How big do you think is the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas? It's difficult to guess even. 99.99999% of the Vedas is Karma Kanda section. Why? Because people have so many varieties of desires. So therefore, Krishna summarizes this Karma Kanda section of the Vedas in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the 42nd verse, second chapter, Krishna says, Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschitaha Vedavadarata partha nanyadasviti bhavimaha Kamatmana swargapara janma karma phala pradam Kriya vishesha bahulam bhoga ishwarya gatim tatim. There are people who call themselves strict followers of the Vedas. They are described here as Vedavadarata. They study the Vedas purely for the purpose of fulfillment of their material desires according to the Vedic principles. In human society, there are always two categories of persons: those who are pious and those who are sinful. Generally, the people born with divine nature are inclined to pious activities, and those born with demoniac nature are inclined to sinful activities. Dvau bhuta sargau lokesmin daiva asura evacha. This is described by Krishna in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. By birth, according to their previous activities and the desires they have cultivated, a human being can be born either with divine nature or with demoniac nature. So those born with divine nature are inclined to pious activities. So for such people, if they at all desire to fulfill their material ambitions through pious methods, the recommendation is there in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, how to fulfill different desires by performance of either yajna or dana or tapa. The real purpose of the Vedas is not this fulfillment of material desires. The real goal of the Vedas is simply to know Krishna. Vedaischa sarvairahameva Veda. All the Vedas we know. Krishna says in the 15th chapter of the Gita. So, to understand this goal of the Vedas is very difficult simply by studying the Vedas. Because the bulk of the Vedas is simply talking about the different methods which follow the Vedic principles for fulfillment of material desires. Now, it is not that material desires are to be entirely abandoned in one's life and completely everyone has to become renounced totally from all material desires. That is not the way the Vedas are recommending a human being to live on this earth planet, at least. The recommendation in the Vedas is that while it is reasonably expected that people will want fulfillment of their material desires while living on this earth, they should also understand something beyond fulfillment of material desires alone. And that is learned from a bona fide spiritual master, from a self-realized self, one who has perfected the Vedic study to realize the self, to realize oneself and realize God and realize the relationship and all the major and minor details of this entire creation. So such a realized person can guide somebody who is interested in understanding the purpose of the Vedas to know that the fulfillment of material desires described in the Vedas is a secondary purpose of the Vedas. The primary purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna, to understand who is God. But people who do not accept a bona fide spiritual master, people who do not follow the spiritual process of the Vedic descriptions, they completely get lost in this karma kanda portion, or being demoniac natured people, they don't care for any rules, regulations, any restrictions, any regulations, regulated way of living, nothing. They don't care. So either pious people or sinful people, if they are not guided by a proper spiritual master, they actually completely miss the goal of the Vedas. So here we have an example of Pururava, who was so much captivated by this Apsara, Urvashi, that after separation from her, he became mad and he was trying to figure out how he can actually again meet her. So when he learnt about this process of yajna to fulfill his desire, he desired to have a son through Urvashi. And for that, he performed this fire sacrifice, which is meant for getting a good son through one's wife. Though he was not properly married to Urvashi, still he considered Urvashi as my wife, and I want to have a son through her. But Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, based on the Vedic description of this particular Pururava's performing the sacrifice. In the Vedas, original Vedas, it is described Shani Garbhat Agnim Mantha. And one more mantra is Urvashyam Urasi Pururavaha. These two Vedic mantras are quoted by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the previous acharyas in our parampara, to help us understand that this description of Pururava enchanted by Urvashi is not simply some imaginary story, nor is it a historical incident which has no connection with the goal of the Vedas. So the Puranas and the Itihasas are actually meant for explaining the Vedas in an easily understandable way through giving references to historical incidents in the past, specifically the history of the Supreme Lord's appearance as incarnations. So the Itihasas and Puranas, even though they contain historical incidents, they are simply meant for the same purpose for which the Vedas were given by the Supreme Lord. That is simply for knowing Krishna, simply for understanding Krishna. So all the Vedas, all the Vedic literature are simply meant for one purpose, for knowing Krishna, for understanding Krishna, for realizing Krishna, for realizing God. That's the only purpose. So therefore, the Bhagavatam this Bhagavat Purana, even though it is called as Purana, actually it is the most sublime Vedic literature, which is simply concerned with explaining who is Krishna. Therefore, one of our acharyas has called this Bhagavatam as Krishna Samhita. Samhita means Vedic literature. Krishna Samhita means that Vedic literature which is exclusively meant for realizing Krishna. And who is Krishna? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth. Satyam Param. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Satyam Param Bhimahi. So in all the Vedic literature, it is only Krishna who is glorified. This is the explanation given by Srila Madhvacharya, one of the acharyas in our parampara. Hari sarvatra giyate. He says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the only one who is actually glorified in all the Vedic literature. The original Vedas, the Upanishads, the Samhitas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda, the Itihasas, the Puranas, the Dharmashastras, the Vedanta Sutras. All these Vedic literatures are only glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. So this cannot be understood simply by studying any of the scriptures. By scholarship, one cannot understand. By analytical methods also, rigorous logic, applying logic, techniques of logic and Vedic study, one cannot understand this purpose of the Vedas, this goal of the Vedas. It's only by association with a self-realized soul, only by associating, learning, hearing, submitting, that one can get to know this goal of the Vedas. Now, why is it so confidential, this goal of the Vedas? It's very, very confidential because people in this world, they are not interested in anything other than their own sense enjoyment. The whole world is simply infatuated by the prospect of sense enjoyment. That's the way this world has been created. Everything in this world is a sense object. That's why one of our acharyas has called this material world as Vishaya Sagara. Sagara means ocean. Vishaya means sense objects. What is sense object? We have got 5 senses: eyes, ears, the nose, the tongue, and the sense of touch. Now, for each of these, there is something called a sense object. For the eyes, it is forms. So the eyes are always seeking beautiful form. Where is beautiful form? Where is beautiful form? And what purpose are the eyes searching after beautiful forms? For enjoying. The nose is always after some nice fragrance. And why nice fragrance for the nose? Because of material enjoyment through the nose. The ears are after some nice, pleasing sounds, either in the form of praise or in the form of sweet words or some nice music. All for personal enjoyment, selfish personal enjoyment. Similarly, the tongue and the sense of taste. So, the majority of the people, almost all the people in this material world, by birth, they have only one interest. That is how to satisfy these five senses. Now, these five senses are centered about what is called as a mind. Manashashthani indriyani. So, the scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita and all the Upanishads, they describe that we have got six senses, not five. The mind is also a sense within. This mind is the center of these five external senses. And the mind is always directing these senses to satisfy concocted desires that we have in terms of our mind. In our mind, always we are planning how to enjoy using our eyes, using our ears, using our nose, using our tongue, and using our sense of touch. So, these six senses, the mind and the five senses, are always seeking some sense objects. Now, everything that we see around us, whether it is people means their external bodies, or any objects, ordinary objects, it will have one or more of these five characteristics. Every object or every person has got a form, or something edible has got some sense of taste, or some things have fragrance, and something is very nice to the sense of touch, or some things are very nice to hear, the sound they produce. Like this, we are always seeking some satisfaction for our senses through the mind whenever we interact with external sense objects in this material world. So all the time we are busy seeking sense enjoyment. That's the only business of people in this material world by virtue of their birth as human beings under the laws of nature. To such an audience, the Vedas are presented. So it's very difficult to draw their attention to something beyond this sense enjoyment. So therefore, first of all, the Vedas are promising you can fulfill your material desires through the Vedic recommendations by which you will not incur sinful reactions. So the first lesson in the Vedas is there are two ways of satisfying your desires. Either you follow the Vedic recommendations, and in that way you don't get sinful reactions and your desires are fulfilled, or you don't care for this Vedas, you do your own way, whatever you want to do, hook or crook, and then you have to suffer sinful reactions. Because the way this world is made is that if you violate the Vedic principles, then you have to suffer punishment by the laws of nature through the three gunas. So an intelligent person will think, yes, I want to fulfill my desires, but why should I violate the Vedic rules and regulations? So let me follow the Vedic principles by which I will not be violating any Vedic principles, the laws of nature, and I'll have my desire fulfilled. At the same time, I will not get any sinful reaction. So such people make a plan for material enjoyment in pious ways, and therefore they become very interested in the Vedas. What are the different recommendations for fulfilling varieties of desires? So such people are described in the Bhagavad Gita as Vedavadara. Generally, such people are very much carried away by the 6 enemies of every human being. Arishadvarga, Shadvairi, lust, kama, krodha, anger, kama, krodha, lobha, greed, mada, intoxication, kama, krodha, lobha, moha. Moha is illusion. Mada is intoxication, and matsarya, enviousness. So these 6 enemies are actually afflicted our heart or our consciousness, and we are driven by these 6 to actually pursue sense enjoyment with the mind as the center of these 6 senses. This is in a sense our material existence. And the Vedas are giving us methods, first of all, to help us give up sinful activities. Because as long as we are sinful, we'll have to suffer material suffering, reactions due to the sinful activities. And we don't want suffering. Nobody wants suffering in this world. Everybody wants happiness or material enjoyment. Nobody wants suffering. So, intelligent people at least want to avoid sinful activities by being pious. So, as people become pious and they avoid sinful activities, they will realize that even if I avoid sinful activities and try to enjoy in a pious way, miseries are nevertheless there in one's life, irrespective of whether somebody is pious or not pious. So that should set a person thinking, what is the use of pursuing these pious methods of enjoyment? Can there be enjoyment without any suffering at all? Can there be happiness without distress? When a person questions like this, then the Vedas are directing such a person to study the portion of the Vedas called the Vedanta of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are describing who we are so that we can understand how we can actually enjoy without any miseries by giving up this material enjoyment business altogether and seeking spiritual happiness, which is pure happiness without any suffering. It is pure pleasure without any pain. It is enjoyment without suffering. So this Vedic wisdom is only for those who understand that material happiness is never available purely. Now, how to realize this? For most people, it is almost impossible. So, the method that is given in the Vedas is one tries to enjoy, and all the while, Maya's business is to actually give suffering continuously. Is there any one person who can say, all through my life I've had only enjoyment and no suffering at all? Only a person in illusion may say that. But actually, one who is not in illusion will have to admit that along with happiness, there is always distress. So for such people, the Vedas are directing towards such literature, which is the actual spiritual literature in the Vedas, spiritual portion of the Vedas, beginning with the Upanishads. So the Upanishads, the main subject matter of the Upanishads is what is called as Brahma Jignasa, inquiry about the self. Who am I? Unless this inquiry is there, there is no spiritual life. And this requires sufficient beating by Maya in the form of suffering, suffering, suffering for those who are not intelligent. So we have intelligence, but that intelligence is awakened by different methods. Our real human intelligence is awakened by different methods. By good association, by association with transcendentalists, one can awaken one's intelligence to the reality of material existence and seek spiritual enlightenment immediately. Immediately. That's why the scripture says sadhu sangha, sadhu sangha, sadhu sangha. Sat sangha. Sat sangha means association with sat or sadhu. Now, who is a sadhu? Not a person who's got a type of dress, saffron dress, or the robes of some spiritualist. No. Not a person with a big beard or a big tilak. Not a person who's expert in chanting some Vedic mantras. A sadhu means a pure devotee of Krishna. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita and the confidential portions of the Vedas, the Upanishads. The Bhagavad Gita says, Bhajate mam ananyabhak sadhureva samantavyaha. A definition for sadhu is given. One who is engaged in undeviating devotional service to Krishna is a sadhu, is a real sadhu. That means one who is a pure devotee. Who can be engaged in undeviating devotional service to Krishna? Only a pure devotee. So sadhu means a pure devotee. And associating with the pure devotee is the fastest and the sure method of awakening our intelligence. And once that intelligence is awakened, one simply seeks after spiritual happiness by spiritual methods, happiness through spiritual methods. Then one's life is successful. That's it. Till this intelligence is awakened, Maya will do her duty of different ways, frustrating people's attempt to be happy without any miseries, without any suffering. Frustrating. Every material attempt to be happy without suffering will be frustrated by Maya. That is called Maya's conditioning. Like Pururava, example of Pururava is given here. How he was very well educated, he was cultured, he was civilized, he was the emperor of the world. He's perfectly ruling. But somehow he got trapped by the beauty of this Apsara, Urvashi. And then he became completely lost in lusty desires for enjoyment, material enjoyment. And then later on he realizes, after being sufficiently beaten by Maya, he realizes. So that is what is explained in the Bhagavatam. So that's why it is said here that he adopted the method of this fire sacrifice to have a son through Urvashi, and that's being described. But the description continues. So in the 11th canto, this is the 9th canto. The 11th canto, there is a portion of 11th canto called Aila Gita. That's a song sung by Pururava after he realized this foolishness in pursuing this material desire for enjoying through sex life with Urvashi. So he realized his foolishness and he came to his senses and he sang a song, and that is given in the 11th canto, Aila Gita. So we have to carefully study this Bhagavatam step by step, and then we will get the real understanding of the purpose for which these portions are included in the Bhagavatam. So I'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Some announcements. We are going to celebrate Vijayadashami on 5th of October. We'll have 6 p.m. onwards, Pallaki Utsav, Harinam Sankirtan, burning the effigies of 15 feet Ravana and Kumbhakarna, part of the celebrations. So, for this ISKCON Dasara celebrations on 5th, we'll be having volunteers meeting today from 9:45 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. at Sridham Hall. So request devotees who are interested in doing some voluntary service on that Dasara festival day, please attend this meeting. Today we'll be having Japa Yajna from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So devotees get an opportunity to chant 16 rounds in the association of other devotees. So please participate in this Yajna, Japa Yajna. The day after Dasara celebrations on 5th, that is on 6th of October, which happens to be in Ekadashi. On that, there will be 64 rounds soulful japa training with His Grace Madhu Pandit Prabhu. So devotees are requested to take advantage of this soulful japa training. Even if you can't attend all 64 rounds of chanting, whatever extent you can attend, please do attend this. It will be from 5:15 in the morning to 2:15 in the afternoon. 5:15 a.m. to 2:15 p.m. on 6th Ekadashi. 64 rounds of chanting this Hare Krishna mantra according to the soulful japa technique. So Madhu Pandit Prabhu will be conducting this. So those who are actually already chanting, you can learn the technique of chanting nicely, effectively, by which you can actually quickly make advancement in Krishna consciousness. We'll be celebrating Deepotsava from 9th October to 8th November, 1 full month. The Damodar Masa or the Kartik Masa, and we'll be actually having the celebrations every evening from 7 p.m. onwards. Specifically, it is recommended that during this Damodar Masa, you offer a ghee lamb to Lord Krishna in his form as Damodara. And very easily you get the blessings of Krishna to actually advance in Krishna consciousness and attain pure devotional service. Those interested in doing regular volunteer services can register your name at the temple book counter. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.